Welcome, everybody. You got Larson and Jack here from Gondola with another episode of Après Sales. And today, what we're talking about is how do you gather good product feedback from your customer base, but then also, once you've gathered all that, how do you prioritize? How do you rank what you should be working on next, this sprint, next sprint, and really create a cohesive product, but gathering that feedback consistently and making sure we're listening to our customer base. But first, of course, as always, Jack, what kind of beer do you got today?
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit of a repeat. I was traveling this week for the first half of the week, so grabbed the last thing in my fridge, but another incredible pedal here from Denver Beer Co. But love it, so I'm happy. What about you,
Nice.
Larson?
Well, I don't have the excuse of I was traveling. I just haven't gone to the liquor store. I still have Pacifico. It's a great beer. It's a great drinking beer. But welcome back, and it's good to have you on today.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Excellent.
A lot of
Cool, Jack.
feedback.
Let's talk about this. So, there's a lot of ways that we do this, and you're kind of the man of the hour here. Certainly, I have ways that we grab feedback on customer calls. But let's start. Let's talk about async first, maybe. How do we gather feedback in more of an async format?
Yeah, I think we'll kind of build up, but I think especially as you build your customer list over time, or even prospect list, right? Lead list in any way. One of the audiobooks I was listening to recently was about the ask method, and there's a couple things that really stood out to me from there. Of course, asking open-ended questions and like surveys that you can send out is a good way to go. So I guess, surveys being the full way of actually reaching out and trying to gather feedback first. Open-ended questions are always good. Definitely not trying to lead them towards any answer. But I think one of the most the pieces that resonated with me the most from that book was about asking negative questions to try to uncover more insight. And what I mean by that is if you ask anybody what they like about something, especially if you're trying to talk about your own product, you tend to get a little bit more fluffy, positive, less concrete answers about what they like, or that can be what I've observed. But if you ask what they don't like, it's much easier for people to identify things they don't like about a product if you're into that. But even if you're earlier in the product development cycle, what do they not like about a workflow they do? So for us, it's sales calls and meetings, but it could be anything related to your product. What are they doing currently and what do they not like about that process? That can be a good way to start to glean some good answers about where you can help and solve better problems.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think that's the right way to think about it. Because if you say, hey, what do you love about it? People are going to say, oh, it's great. It's fantastic. I love it. The product is awesome. It's the best thing I've ever seen, which is essentially telling you nothing. But if you say, hey, what really drove you crazy? You're almost like laying yourself out there to be like, kind of let me have it a little bit. Come on, let's open up this door. Let's have a real conversation a bit.
Yeah. And surveys are great and emails are great. I think, we've had mixed success with getting good response rates in the past. Maybe someone can chime in and tell us how they've been successful with that in the past. But you don't have to send out surveys, especially this day and age with all the tools available to software companies about how to gather product information. You can use behavioral analytics tools like Mixpanel to see what people are doing to try to understand who's not completing a certain workflow that you're interested in. But there are a lot of good like session recording tools, like Full Story is one we use well, but I think there's a lot of other ones like Hotjar, and I think I don't think Google Analytics has a piece of this, but where you can these tools basically send you the HTML and JavaScript and CSS that your users are actually working with, of course filtering out any of the sensitive information on that page, and then let you see how they click through an onboarding workflow or a core workflow and actually set up funnels based on what people are working through in your product. So if you're like, we're really seeing poor conversion through the onboarding, or we're trying to get to this really core action, but people just aren't getting there. You can set up funnels for different steps of the process and actually watch people that got halfway through, but then didn't get to the end result, or those who consistently got to the end result. What did they see or try or do? And so you don't have to rely on just calls or surveys. If you have a product, I think the money is well worth it to get one of those tools that lets you actually see what users are doing in your application. It's really invaluable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've used it a ton. It's gave us the full picture. Maybe when people are a little bit hesitant to really give us the true feedback, or, maybe we can't get them on the phone, or, what have you, can help us give a full picture of it. And you kind of come up with an interpretation of like, man, they just keep clicking on this. They don't really get where they want to be going. And when you built the product, it's like, well, I kind of know where you should be going. I know the workflows behind this. And if you're not following that, then, well, we might have some understanding here of what might be a little bit messed up.
Yeah, totally. And we'll get into like what to do with this information later on like the prioritization. But I think it's an instinct I was guilty of early on. It's like, oh, I'm just going to go develop a thing to help that person do whatever, right? To like jump right into development. But one of the tools we've started using recently that I've been super happy with that our designer Daria brought on, shout out to her, is a tool called Maze. And basically that lets you use Figma designs, or I'm sure they support other platforms too, but Figma designs to walk a user through a fake workflow using only mockups. But you can track bad clicks. So if they clicked on something you didn't want them to, if they took a long time to complete a workflow, whatever that might be, using only mockups, so no coding required. And getting that type of insight, especially because they allow you to add open-ended questions on the back half about what went well or what didn't, can really provide that next level of product feedback on what you're thinking of doing to solve the problem. So definitely not jumping right into feature dev to try to solve the problem is the right way to go, in my opinion.
Certainly, and we've definitely learned that the hard way over the years. But
It's
one
true.
thing, yeah, that's certainly the truth. And one thing I will say, Jack, is we've done a good, consistent job of gathering feedback via surveys, via Maze, via Full Story, and all those pieces. But a lot of times when you're reaching out to customers, you say, "Hey, let's get on the phone, let's talk about it." Or if we get a bad survey result, we want to reach out to them and say, "Hey, how can we fix this? Let's talk a little bit more. I'd love to learn more about that." So I think that's where we should go to next. If you get someone on the phone, how do you kind of walk through those interview pieces and get the information that's really true and honest without leading them one direction or another? So I'm curious how you think about that when you get somebody on the phone.
Yeah, well, in the vein of like kind of one of our earlier spots of what not to do, I was fortunate enough early in my career to work at a company called Epic, which is a big electronic medical records provider. Maybe people have heard of them, but um, electronic medical records, insanely complex, super technical. And one thing that I loved about working there was got really into user feedback and user like evaluation workflows of a proposed product. And there were a lot of good learnings there, but I think one of the most important pieces you have to do is first set the context that you're not going to hurt my feelings. Any feedback you have is on the product, not me. Don't worry about it. We're good. Be as raw as you can, but really not doing your best to not lead people into the direction you want them to go. The workflows and the context that you ask people to try, on a sales call or onboarding, it's a little different. But if it's a real product feedback conversation, saying try to do this thing, what do you think about it? Like as open ended as possible without trying to say, I want you to use this, presentation tool, but let me show you how it works first. Here's what you're supposed to do. What do you think about it now? That is like no good. Can't dive into what you want them to do. It has to be open ended without any guiding pieces. You can really see what people think about it.
Yeah. Well, I think too, I think it's important always to be gathering this type of feedback and to do so in that type of manner, but particularly with higher use of your product. If your product is a weekly use, daily use product multiple times a day, it's got to be intuitive. It's got to be easy to use. It's got to be, people can come in, stand up, get going fairly easily. And if there are these little pieces that aren't quite there because you were leading your customer too much on the front half, well, that could be problematic for you down the line where, hey, now people can't really, it's not as intuitive as maybe what you initially thought because you did too many leading questions and kind of guidance along the front half.
It can really like kneecap your feedback if you're leading too much. It's no good.
Yeah.
And as they're working through the workflow, or what I like to do to start those is start with some open-ended questions. Again, open-ended questions on ask about their workflow and what they're doing today and how they've tried to solve it in the past. And a piece of feedback that I believe we got from one of our advisors, Julie Penner, on a different piece was asking why until it's painful. The question why. Why are you trying to do it that way? Why do you want to do it that way? Like, why do you think that's the right thing to do? If you get 3 to 5 whys in on a workflow, you're probably starting to get to the real core of what someone's thinking in their head as they try to use your platform. And that is where the real gold is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen you do this a lot, and there's so many parallels to discovery. It's just crazy. It's like discovery on the sales side is a lot of times on the initial discovery call, we have to ask why 3 to 5 times. Why are you focused on that? Why is that important now? Why do you need to get that done in this time frame? And you get the same type of looks from people. Eventually, you get that 3 to 5 way in. They're like, "All right, man, I get it. Like, let's cool it with the questions. Let's show me something. Let's do something else." But you kind of get a sense from people when it's a little too much, though. But that's really the right way to do it, no doubt.
Yeah, and you mentioned discovery calls, but I think one of our best pieces of product feedback is the massive amount of onboardings you and the go-to-market team are running. And we use those onboarding recordings is a really good way
Oh yeah.
to get product feedback. Maybe you can talk about how we've done that a bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, similar to you asking why until, prospects are blue in the face, but that's kind of our job too. And there's a feature or a function that they want or a workflow, we have to have the same level of discipline on the go to market side. It's really, as I was saying, great, let's do it. Let's get that. When we talk to the engineering team, let's get it built, and I'll see it next week. And here we go. We're gonna get the deal done. You got to ask why. Why can't you do that today? Why is that important to you? How do you see that fitting into this? So we on go to market have to have the equal amount of discipline for our sales cycle for sure, but then also for product feedback, because if we skip those steps when a feature request comes in, then you all have to, on engineering, have to go back and talk to them again and ask why. Otherwise, we've set you up for failure. And if
Yeah.
we do diligent, digging on that front half, well, then we get to use, then it's a cakewalk. Then what we do is say, hey, we're using Zoom IQ. We have all the conversation analytics behind this, and we tag our engineers at the right spot. You go in, you listen to it, you listen to that little micro interview there. It took 3 minutes out of your day to do that. Prospect is really, customer's very happy because they just had one conversation, didn't have to jump back on the phone again. But those types of resources like a Zoom IQ can be so helpful to giving visibility into how customers and prospects are describing their needs and wants if we are diligent about asking deeply about what they do want and why.
Totally. I really can't even underscore enough how helpful it has been to have Zoom IQ on board to really see what people are doing during your sales workflows, being able to look at those from the product and engineering team and analyze them. I mean, it's a little bit twofold, especially in a startup like us. Like, on one hand, it's just super easy to get in there and get that snippet or the little piece, the playlist in Zoom IQ of like, here's the product feedback pieces we've heard about a certain workflow or pipeline view, browser extension, whatever that might be, to get in there and get that feedback. But I think a side benefit too, it's not quite what we're talking about, but it's just exciting. From the engineering perspective, getting to see a real user get onboarded as you're, guiding them through the workflow, seeing what challenges they hit and seeing the reaction of a really positive, like, whoa, that's awesome. I can't believe we can do that. Getting that feedback to the like frontline engineers, if you will, about seeing how their work is really affecting the value and the workflow of other people firsthand,
Mm-hmm.
super awesome. I love seeing that.
Well, yeah, it's just, it's a great way to transfer enthusiasm too, because a lot of times as the go to market people, we get to experience all the excitement and sometimes not excitement, but excitement about new features, functions, what's coming up, what they're excited about. And it's hard for us to convey that to engineering at times. And so it's so critical for things like Zoom IQ. They can go in, they can listen to it, get to experience that body language of someone's eyes lighting up. They're like, whoa, this is incredible. Or you turn that around so quickly. And you got to have those feel good moments. Otherwise, you're just kind of typing away at a computer and it's like, man, who's using this on the other end? What do they like it, dislike it? All those types of things.
Yeah, those ones and zeros get old after
Ones
a
and
while.
zeros for sure.
But
Well,
I actually really like what you said, transfer enthusiasm.
mhm.
That's a nice point. I like that.
Yeah,
That's a good way
yeah,
to say it.
for sure. Well, Jack, so, we've gathered all this feedback right now, right? So you got all this, the whole slew of different feature requests, product requests. How do you make organized sense out of all this stuff? How do you prioritize these pieces?
Yeah, gosh, it really is, I think, probably the most important part because if you just, grab the fire hose of product feedback, which you should be getting a fire hose of product feedback through all these things, if you just try to just throw darts at the dartboard, it's not going to end well. And so having a good prioritization framework is essential. And I think the first thing is identify like what you're trying to move. Like it's helped us to be as data driven as possible. So we work in 8-week cycles personally, and it's like, what is the metric that we're trying to move in these 8 weeks with the features that we're working on? Could it be, in our case, syncs back to the CRM? Could it be views of the pipeline? Whatever it might be, what are we trying to move? Why are we trying to move it? And how is what we're going to develop actually going to move the needle? There are a lot of prioritization frameworks you can use. There's just value, like simple ones, like what's the value versus the effort here? There's quick wins, like what can we do really, really fast to just try to get something improved. But the one we've really centered around that's been useful for us is the RICE framework. It's an acronym for reach. Why am I blanking on it now? Reach, impact, confidence, and effort. The reach being how many people is this going to affect?
Yep.
The impact, what's the like impact in their workflow. If this is like a little bug fix on the side to a notification, that's a super low impact. If this is a change to how they, the number of clicks it takes to accomplish a task, that'd be a higher impact. The confidence is how confident are we on those first two? So if it's a crazy idea, our confidence would be low. If we have done all this product feedback and have a really good understanding at that point, the confidence would be very high on those other two. And then the effort finally can be measured in different ways. We use it in developer weeks, I think is what we use it is how we measure that, is how long would it take one developer to do this task. And so, if you have two people taking a week, it's 2 developer weeks. If it's going to take one person half a week, 0.5. And you can get to a score by doing the reach times the impact times the confidence divided by the overall effort. And that can give you a really powerful gut check, if nothing else, on like if what you're doing will have a good impact. And it's been useful for us.
Certainly. Yeah, I remember, I won't forget the first time that we did that, where we had a list of probably 20 or 30 features. We went through and did that prioritization, and we were really struggling on what's number one. We had some ideas, but top 5, and it's just like that. And some things rose to the top that we didn't expect because of that framework, but it really made a lot of sense when we kind of looked at it from a high level. It's like, oh, maybe, I think this is the right way to be doing this. So it's kind of an objective framework and a good way to kind of calculate almost what is the right thing to be working on next.
Yeah, and you mentioned things that come to the top, but I actually think the craziest part is things that drop to the bottom. And that's when you can catch yourself on those, ooh, I really want to do this thing, without the either reach, impact, or confidence that you wanted it to be. Maybe, I wanted it to be a super high impact thing, but when I put it through this framework, actually the impact's going to be low. I just think it'll be cool. I'll speak for myself. I've caught myself doing that a couple times, more than a couple times. So it's a good way to check yourself.
Certainly. Well, this has been great, Jack. I mean, really the whole topic was gathering product feedback, prioritizing. We talked about async via surveys, full story, different solutions out there, or synchronously, how to run great, customer interviews on feature requests, how to do it from a go-to-market perspective, be using Zoom IQ to record everything and share snippets, transferring that enthusiasm, and then using good frameworks like RICE to prioritize. But this has been super helpful. It's a great conversation. Anything else to add before we let everyone go?
No, but we've talked about so much here. I think I would be really curious for anyone watching here towards the end of the video, like what you've used, or if there's been, like I mentioned at the beginning, ways that you've gotten better response rates on surveys, better, learnings from the synchronous calls, or different prioritization frameworks that have worked or not worked. I'd love to hear. So if that's you, let me know.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining in. Cheers, Jack. Happy Thursday. Great week. And we'll talk to everyone soon. Take it easy.
See ya.